In February, as you know, Congress passed and President Obama signed into law the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act of 2009, commonly referred to as ARRA, which provides billions of dollars of support for education, including nearly $5 billion in funding to be used in a discretionary manner by the U.S. Secretary of Education, Arne Duncan. This was the genesis of the Race to the Top competitive grants. In March, if you remember, our committee held an informational hearing where we asked a number of witnesses to begin to provide us with more information on this federal legislation and on those areas where the state and the legislature might be required to take action in order to maximize the funding that California might receive and to make use of those funds. At that time, we also heard that the Secretary would be developing regulations to govern Race to the Top. We are now in the middle of that process where the federal government is developing those Race to the Top regulations, preliminary guidance requirements, and criteria that will be used to judge the competitive state applications that will be submitted. Hundreds of sets of formal comments on that guidance has also been submitted to the federal government, and the final version of that guidance is to be released later this year. So we are taking this opportunity today to continue what we started in March by calling back some of the witnesses that we heard from at that hearing, and we're asking them to bring us up to date on ARRA and specifically on the Race to the Top. Today we will hear from the Legislative Analyst's Office, the California Department of Education, the Office of Secretary of Education, and a number of stakeholder groups, all of which have participated in the federal regulatory process by submitting comments to the Secretary of Education, Arne Duncan. In two subsequent informational hearings, we will more closely examine the four reform areas that are the overarching framework of the specific requirements and criteria proposed by the U.S. Department of Education. And as we all know, those four areas are standards and assessment, data systems to support instruction, great teachers and leaders, and turning around struggling schools. So we will spend the upcoming hearings drilling down on those four subject areas to determine where California is and what we may have to do in order to be competitive for the Race to the Top dollars. I just want to say that I think that there is clearly a certain urgency about these hearings and a response. I would also like to say we want to make sure that we are getting it right. Arne Duncan himself, in a meeting with many of the legislators, said this is not about the money, but it is about turning around schools and making good reform and moving California forward and moving the rest of the states forward and really getting it right in terms of what is the right reform. I hope at the end of these hearings that common areas of agreement will emerge from the various stakeholders and that we can indeed formulate a plan, solution, legislation to address the Race to the Top regulations, as we will find out towards the end of this year what exactly they are. I look forward to hearing what our presenters have to say today and over the following three hearings, and hope that this generates questions and discussions from the members, and I hope it will be helpful for all of us.